The crimson light of twin suns filtered through the medical bay's viewport as Commander Vexara Nyxel stared at the void where her arms should have been. Sterile field generators hummed around her, maintaining the temporary seals over the cleanly cauterized wounds that ended just below her shoulders. Her violet skin had taken on a paler hue, the bioluminescent patterns that typically danced across her flesh now dim and sluggish. "The human facility is our best option, Commander," Admiral Ketra said, his gravelly voice betraying no emotion though his secondary eyes narrowed in concern. "Their neural prosthetic technology is the most advanced in the quadrant, even beyond our own." Vexara's jaw tightened, the row of small horns along her hairline bristling with indignation. Was first blade of the Imperial Taurian Guard. I cannot be seen as diminished. You were ambushed by Voraxian shock troops while defending a civilian transport. You lost your arms saving 17 children. There is no dishonor in that." She turned away, unwilling to let even her commanding officer see the moisture gathering in her eyes. On Taurus Prime, warriors who could no longer fight were given honorable retirement, a living death to someone like her who had known nothing but battle her entire life. "The diplomatic corps has arranged everything," Ketra continued. "It's part of our new scientific exchange program with Earth. You will receive their best care." "And be a laboratory specimen," she spat. "You will be a bridge between our worlds," he corrected gently. "The humans need to see that we are more than the war machines their media portrays us as." 3 solar cycles later, the Taurian diplomatic vessel Sunspear entered Earth's orbit. Vexara had spent the journey meditating and struggling to adapt to her new reality. Simple tasks, eating, dressing, personal hygiene, now required humiliating assistance. Her pride lay in tatters, much like the ceremonial cloak that had been shredded during the attack. Earth appeared as a swirl of blue and white beneath them, beautiful but alien. As the shuttle descended through the atmosphere, Vexara steeled herself for whatever indignities awaited her. Dr. Elias Morgan hunched over his workstation, deep in the bowels of the International Neural Prosthetics Institute. His dark hair stood at odd angles where he'd absently run his fingers through it, and empty coffee cups formed a small city around his terminal. "They're landing in 30 minutes, Eli," Dr. Patel called from the doorway. "Maybe consider a shower before meeting our extraterrestrial guest." Elias looked up, blinking owlishly behind his glasses. "Is it Wednesday already?" "It's Friday and you've been in here for nearly 40 hours straight." Patel tossed him a clean lab coat. "The director wants you presentable. This is the biggest diplomatic milestone since first contact." Elias saved his work, advanced neural mapping algorithms tailored to Taurian physiology and stretched until his spine cracked. "I've been studying everything they sent us on their neurological structure. It's fascinating, Mira. Their nervous system has redundant pathways that ours doesn't, and their muscle control is distributed across." "Shower now, diplomatic milestone, career-defining opportunity," Patel interrupted, pointing to the door. 38 minutes later, Elias stood in the Institute's cavernous reception area alongside a small delegation of doctors, scientists, and government officials. He'd managed to shower and change, though his hair remained unruly and his lab coat was rumpled. He clutched a tablet containing his preliminary designs, nervously tapping a stylus against its edge. The massive doors slid open, revealing a delegation of Taurians in formal military attire, towering figures with violet skin and imposing presence. At their center was a figure in a modified medical transport chair. Despite her seated position and the empty sleeves of her uniform pinned neatly at her sides, she radiated such authority that Elias found himself straightening his posture. The facility director stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth's International Coalition, welcome to the Neural Prosthetics Institute. I am Director Akafer, and we are honored to assist in Commander Nyxel's rehabilitation." The tallest Taurian, adorned with elaborate rank insignia, responded in perfect English. "Admiral Ketra of the Imperial Taurian Fleet, we entrust Commander Vexara Nyxel to your care as agreed in the Proxima Accords." Elias barely registered the formal exchanges that followed. His attention was fixed on the commander's face, the proud set of her jaw, the subtle bioluminescent patterns beneath her skin that scientific journals had explained indicated emotional states, the barely concealed fury and shame in her silver eyes. When Director Akafer finally introduced him, Elias stepped forward awkwardly. "Dr. Elias Morgan, Neuroprosthetic Engineering. I'll be, designing and implementing your new arms." Commander Nyxel's gaze locked onto his, and Elias felt as if he were being dissected. "And have you ever worked with Taurian physiology before, Dr. Morgan?" "No, but I've been studying everything your medical corps provided, and I've developed several preliminary designs that should interface with your unique neural structure." Your nervous system's redundancy actually gives us more options than a human patient would have. She seemed surprised by his direct answer. At least you don't pretend expertise you don't possess. I'm not very good at pretending anything, Elias admitted. But I am good at solving puzzles, and your case is the most fascinating puzzle I've encountered. A ripple of alarm passed through the diplomatic corps at his casual characterization, but something in Vexara's expression shifted slightly. I am not a puzzle, Dr. Morgan. I am a warrior without arms. Right now, he corrected, then flinched as Director Akafer shot him a warning look. Sorry, what I mean is, temporary situation, not permanent. The following weeks proved challenging for both Vexara and Elias. The Institute had prepared private quarters reflecting Taurian environmental preferences, higher gravity, warmer temperatures, specialized lighting mimicking Taurus Prime's twin suns. But no amount of environmental adjustment could ease Vexara's sense of displacement. Elias worked tirelessly, often foregoing sleep as he refined his designs. Each scanning session revealed new intricacies of Taurian neural pathways. Each interaction with Vexara taught him something about her culture's approach to injury and healing. Your people view scars as badges of honor, he noted one afternoon as he mapped the nerve endings at her shoulder. But prosthetics are seen differently. Vexara winced slightly as the diagnostic tool sent a small current through her tissue. Scars are earned in battle. They tell the story of victory despite injury. Prosthetics tell the story of loss that cannot be overcome naturally. That's not how we see them here, Elias said, adjusting the scanner. Sorry if that hurt. We see prosthetics as a triumph of will, the determination to continue despite obstacles. A convenient perspective for beings as fragile as humans, she retorted, but without real malice. Elias smiled slightly. We've had to adapt. Not all of us are born with exoskeletons and regenerative capabilities. To his surprise, a faint pattern of luminescence, amusement he'd learned flickered across her skin. Yet you've managed to spread across your solar system despite your limitations. There is resilience in that. Speaking of resilience, Elias said, bringing up a holographic display, these are the latest designs. Titanium vanadium alloy core, synth flesh exterior that should match your skin tone and even replicate some bioluminescent responses. The neural interface will allow for sensation as well as movement. Vexara studied the rotating image with intensity. They look strong. They'll be stronger than your original arms by about 40%, Elias confirmed, though the sensory input will need calibration to match your previous experience. That evening, as attendants helped Vexara prepare for sleep, she found herself reflecting on the strange human doctor. He lacked the polished courtesy of the diplomats, the careful distance of the other medical staff. He spoke to her as a person, not a diplomatic incident or a medical curiosity. It was refreshing in a disorienting way. Meanwhile, Elias sat alone in his lab, reviewing the day's scans and making micro-adjustments to his designs. On his screen was not only the technical data but an image of Vexara from her military file, resplendent in full battle armor, both arms intact, commanding a battalion with confident authority. I'll get you back there, he murmured to the image. Different maybe, but whole again. He didn't understand why this particular patient had become so important to him. Perhaps it was the technical challenge or the diplomatic significance. Or perhaps it was something in those silver eyes, the fierce will to reclaim what was lost, no matter the cost. Whatever it was, Elias Morgan had never been more determined to succeed. The first neural integration test failed spectacularly. Vexara roared in pain as the prototype arm connected to her nervous system, sending feedback cascading through pathways that hadn't been properly mapped. The prosthetic jerked wildly before she tore it away with her teeth, sending it clattering across the laboratory floor. Shut it down, Elias shouted, rushing to her side as technicians scrambled to disconnect the neural interface. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Vexara's breathing came in harsh gasps, bioluminescent patterns flaring across her skin in chaotic bursts of color that Elias recognized as indicators of severe distress. The monitoring equipment around them wailed with alarms. Get out, she snarled once the pain subsided enough for her to speak. All of you. The technicians quickly withdrew, but Elias remained, methodically checking her vital signs even as she glared at him. I said leave, she growled. No, he replied quietly, continuing his work. I made a mistake in the calibration. I need to understand exactly what went wrong. What went wrong is that you underestimated Taurian pain thresholds, she said through clenched teeth. Your calculations assumed human parameters. Elias paused, recognition dawning on his face. You're right, I adjusted for strength and neural complexity but not sensory input levels. He ran his hand through his hair, making it stand up even more than usual. You experience pain more intensely than humans do. We evolved as prey species before we developed sentience and technology, Vexara explained, surprised at herself for offering the information. Pain is a powerful survival mechanism. Elias nodded, making rapid notes on his tablet. That explains so much about the outlier readings we've been getting. I need to recalibrate everything. Vexara studied his face, the genuine distress in his eyes, the determined set of his jaw. There was no condescension, no clinical detachment, only concern and a fierce determination to solve the problem. You truly care about getting this right, she observed. He looked up, surprised. Of course I do. This isn't just a project for me, Vexara. This is your life, your future. It was the first time he had used her name without her rank, and strangely, she didn't mind. The following weeks brought incremental progress. Elias redesigned the neural interfaces from scratch, working directly with Vexara to understand the nuances of her sensory experience. They spent hours together in the lab, then in the physical therapy facility, and eventually on walks through the Institute's extensive gardens when Vexara needed to escape the sterile environment. Our world has 3 times as many flowering plant species as Earth, she told him one evening as they paused beneath a cherry tree in full bloom. A light breeze scattered petals around them like pink snow, but none quite like this. Elias watched the play of Earth's sunset light across her features. The violet of her skin took on a golden hue in the waning sunlight, and her silver eyes reflected the cherry blossoms overhead. Beautiful, he murmured, not looking at the tree. Vexara turned to find him watching her, and for once didn't avert her gaze. On Taurus Prime, such direct eye contact would be considered either a challenge or an intimate gesture between bonded pairs. Here with him, the boundaries seemed increasingly blurred. The new prototypes will be ready tomorrow, he said, clearing his throat. I think we've finally got the sensory calibration right. You've been working too hard, she noted. The dark circles under his eyes hadn't escaped her notice, even by human standards. He shrugged. I want to get this right. Why, she asked directly, beyond professional pride or diplomatic importance. Why does it matter so much to you personally? Elias was silent for a long moment, contemplating the falling petals. When I was 12, my sister was in an accident, spinal injury. The doctors said she wouldn't walk again. He glanced at Vexara. I didn't accept that. I learned everything I could about neural pathways, prosthetics, interface technologies. By the time I finished my second doctorate, I designed a partial spinal bypass that helped her walk again. And she walks now. Runs marathons, actually, he said with a small smile. She's more machine than I am in some ways, but she says she feels whole. Vexara nodded slowly. And that is what you wish for me, to feel whole again. Yes, his answer was simple but heartfelt. She reached out with her shoulder, gently bumping against his arm, a Taurian gesture of appreciation that she'd never before used with a human. Then we will continue tomorrow. The second integration test was a revelation. As the neural interfaces connected, Vexara gasped, not in pain this time but in wonder. She could feel the temperature of the air against synthetic skin, the pressure of the table beneath her new fingers, the texture of the calibration cube Elias placed in her grasp. Careful with your grip strength, Elias cautioned, watching the readouts. We've matched your original capabilities, but the feedback loop is still stabilizing. Vexara barely heard him. She was transfixed by the sight of her new arms, sleek, powerful limbs with violet synth-skin that perfectly matched her natural coloration. As she flexed her emotions, faint patterns of bioluminescence rippled beneath the surface, responding to her neural commands. Try the precision test, he suggested, setting a series of small objects before her. With intense concentration, Vexara picked up a small glass bead, then a surgical needle, then a single thread. Each movement became more natural than the last as her brain adapted to the new neural pathways. This is remarkable, she breathed, looking up at Elias with undisguised amazement. His face broke into a wide grin. That's just the beginning. We still have range of motion exercises, strength calibration, combat simulations. Combat, she straightened, hope flaring within her. You believe I could return to combat duties? These arms are designed for it, he confirmed. Reinforced skeletal structure, impact dampeners, quick-release mechanisms if one gets damaged in battle. You'll be able to fight again if that's what you want. Without thinking, Vexara reached out and pulled Elias into an embrace. The feeling of her new arms wrapping around another person, the warmth of his body, the surprised catch in his breath was overwhelming. She released him quickly, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the gesture. Forgive me, she said, flustered. That was inappropriate. Elias' face had flushed pink, but his smile remained. No apology needed. I'd call that a successful test of spontaneous motor function. Their eyes met and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of boundaries crossed but not regretted. Again, Vexara commanded, circling the combat training drone. Her new arms gleamed under the harsh lights of the training facility, their movements now fluid and natural after weeks of intensive therapy. The drone attacked with programmed precision, its strike aimed at her midsection. Vexara blocked with her left arm, absorbing the impact with ease, then countered with a lightning-fast right hook that sent the machine skidding backward. From the observation deck, Elias monitored the telemetry with growing satisfaction. Her neural integration was nearly perfect, response times matching her pre-injury capabilities, strength levels properly regulated, fine motor control exceeding expectations. Director Akafer stood beside him, impressed. The Taurian diplomats will be pleased with her progress. They're sending a delegation next week to evaluate her fitness to return to duty. Something cold settled in Ilya's stomach so soon. It's been 3 months, Dr. Morgan. The exchange program was always temporary. Akafer gave him a sidelong glance. Unless there's a reason to extend it. Below them, Vexara executed a perfect combination of strikes that disabled the drone completely. She stood over it, chest heaving with exertion, face alight with the joy of reclaimed ability. No, Elias said quietly, no reason at all. Later that evening, Elias found Vexara in the facility's observatory. The domed room offered a panoramic view of the night sky, and she stood beneath the stars, her new arms crossed over her chest as she gazed upward. Your people must be pleased with your progress, he said, coming to stand beside her. She nodded without looking at him. Admiral Ketra sent a personal commendation. The Imperial Guard is prepared to reinstate me to active duty. That's what you wanted, isn't it? To be whole again, to return to your life. Vexara turned to face him. What I wanted has become complicated. The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Elias stepped closer, close enough to see the subtle patterns of light beneath her skin, patterns he'd learned to recognize over their months together. Uncertainty, longing. Vexara, he began, but was interrupted by a sudden alarm blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights began to flash and the observatory dome automatically sealed itself. The facility's AI announced in calm tones, "Security breach in Laboratory 7. All personnel implement lockdown protocols. This is not a drill." Laboratory 7, Vexara's eyes widened. That's where my neural interface prototypes are stored. Elias was already at the communication panel. Central, this is Dr. Morgan, what's happening? The response came through with bursts of static. Industrial espionage team, armed, targeted the Taurian prosthetic designs, security team engaged, but the transmission cut off abruptly. The neural interface design, Elias said grimly. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could be weaponized against Taurian physiology. Vexara was already moving toward the door. We need to secure those prototypes. Wait, Elias caught her arm, marveling briefly at how natural the gesture felt now. These aren't just common thieves, they're professionals probably armed. She looked down at where his hand touched her new arm, then back to his face. I am a warrior of the Imperial Guard, Elias. This is what I was made for. Her expression softened slightly. And what you remade me for. He released her, then moved to a wall panel and entered his security code. A section of the wall slid away, revealing an emergency weapons cache. He removed a neural disruptor and handed it to her. Non-lethal but effective, he explained. I'll guide you through the maintenance corridors. We can reach the lab without being seen. Vexara accepted the weapon, surprise evident in her expression. You are not what you appear to be, Dr. Morgan. Neither are you, Commander Nixel. He managed a tight smile. Shall we? The corridor outside Laboratory 7 was eerily silent, emergency lights casting everything in a crimson glow. Elias and Vexara moved in perfect synchronization, communicating with hand signals they'd developed during physical therapy sessions. Through the laboratory's transparent doors, they could see 3 figures in black tactical gear methodically downloading data and collecting prototype components. A 4th stood guard, heavily armed. Security teams are pinned down 2 levels below, Elias whispered, checking his communicator. No help coming soon. Vexara nodded, formulating a plan. I'll engage and draw their fire. You circle around and secure the main server. Too dangerous, your arms haven't been fully tested in combat conditions. She flexed her new fingers, bioluminescent patterns rippling with determination. Then this will be the final exam. Before he could protest further, she moved, faster than he'd ever seen her move in training. She burst through the doors, firing the neural disruptor with her left hand while her right arm deflected a barrage of return fire. Elias seized the distraction to access the emergency panel and initiate a localized EMP burst that would fry any external storage devices. As the pulse discharged, the laboratory plunged into darkness for 3 seconds before emergency power engaged. When the lights returned, Vexara had neutralized 2 of the intruders. The third had Elias in a chokehold, using him as a shield while the fourth aimed a weapon at Vexara. "Drop your weapon or I snap his neck," the intruder holding Elias snarled. Time seemed to slow. Elias could see the calculation in Vexara's eyes, the tactical assessment, the weighing of options. A true warrior would make the strategic choice, sacrifice the one for the greater good. Their eyes locked across the room. In that moment, something passed between them, something beyond words, beyond species, beyond reason. Vexara slowly lowered her weapon. "Pathetic," the intruder laughed. "They said Taurians were cold-blooded killers. Looks like you've gone soft, alien." "Not soft," Vexara replied calmly, "simply evolving." As she spoke, her right arm began to glow with an intense bioluminescent pattern, a feature Elias had incorporated as a diagnostic tool but never expected to be weaponized. The sudden flare of light momentarily blinded the intruders, and in that split second, Vexara moved. Her strike was precise and devastating. The intruder holding Elias crumpled without a sound, and before the second could recover his vision, Vexara had disarmed and incapacitated him as well. As security teams finally broke through to secure the laboratory, Vexara knelt beside Elias, gently helping him to his feet. "Are you injured?" she asked, her fingers carefully examining the bruising at his throat. He shook his head, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat, from the chokehold or from emotion he wasn't sure. Her touch was so gentle, so at odds with the lethal efficiency she displayed moments before. "You risked the mission," he finally managed, "for me." Vexara's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a pattern he'd never seen before, deep pulses of light that moved from her core outward toward her fingertips. "Some things are worth the risk," Elias Morgan. She leaned forward then hesitantly and pressed her forehead to his, a Taurian gesture of profound intimacy. The warmth of her skin against his scent, a current through him more powerful than any neural interface. "I leave for Taurus Prime in 5 days," she whispered, "unless I have reason to stay." Elias closed his eyes, his hands finding hers, flesh meeting synth flesh in a grip that felt like coming home. "I can think of at least one good reason." Around them, the chaos of the security breach continued. But in that moment, they existed in a world of their own making. A world built on trust, forged in challenge, and now opening to possibilities neither had dared imagine before. The Taurian diplomatic vessel hung in Earth's orbit like a gleaming silver arrow, its engines pulsing with contained energy. Inside the observation deck of the International Neural Prosthetics Institute, Vexara stood at rigid attention as Admiral Ketra inspected her new arms with critical eyes. "Impressive work," the Admiral conceded, watching as Vexara demonstrated a series of complex combat maneuvers. "Full functionality restored, perhaps even enhanced." "Dr. Morgan's design exceeds all performance metrics of my original limbs," Vexara confirmed, her voice carefully neutral despite the pride she felt. "Strength, dexterity, sensory input, all optimal." Ketra nodded, then dismissed the other members of his delegation with a gesture. When they were alone, his formal demeanor softened slightly. "The Imperial Guard awaits your return, Commander. Your position as First Blade has been held open, as I promised." He studied her face. "Yet I sense hesitation where once there was only certainty." Vexara's bioluminescent patterns flickered beneath her skin, a momentary lapse in emotional control that would have been unthinkable before her time on Earth. "My duty is to the Empire," she said firmly. "Your duty, yes." Ketra's secondary eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "But what of your heart, Vexara? We are warriors, but we are not machines. Even the ancient texts acknowledge that a divided spirit cannot serve with its full strength." She looked sharply at her commander, surprised by his insight. "My personal feelings are irrelevant to my service." "Are they?" The Admiral moved to the viewport, gazing down at the blue-green planet below. "The alliance with Earth grows more crucial each day. The Voraxian threat expands. We need leaders who understand both worlds, who can bridge the divide between our peoples." Hope flickered within her, quickly suppressed. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "Options," he replied simply. "The diplomatic corps has requested a military liaison stationed permanently on Earth, someone who understands human ways but remains Taurian in spirit." He turned back to her. "Someone like you." "A liaison role is not a warrior's path," Vexara said, though the possibility tantalized her. Is it not? Ketra smiled thinly. The attack on this facility proved otherwise. Our enemies fear this alliance precisely because of the strength it creates. He stepped closer. Besides, I've seen the way you look at the human doctor. Some battles are fought not for duty but for oneself. Before Vexara could respond, the door slid open and Director Akafor entered with Elias close behind. The Admiral straightened, his formal demeanor instantly restored. Dr. Morgan, he said, extending a four-fingered hand in the human gesture he'd learned. Your work has honored our agreement and restored a valuable warrior to service. Elias accepted the handshake, his eyes briefly meeting Vexara's before focusing on the Admiral. Commander Nyxel did the hard part, I just provided the tools. Modest words from an immodest achievement, Ketra observed. The Torian Science Academy has expressed interest in continuing your research collaboration. Perhaps an exchange program could be arranged. Vexara caught the subtle current of meaning beneath the Admiral's words. He was offering a path not just for her but potentially for Elias as well. Hope flickered again, stronger this time. The final transport departs at dawn, Ketra announced, moving toward the door. Commander Nyxel, I expect your decision regarding your posting by then. He paused at the threshold. Choose wisely, First Blade. Some victories come only once in a lifetime. As the door closed behind him, silence fell over the room. Director Akafor cleared her throat. I'll give you two a moment, she said diplomatically, following the Admiral's exit. Alone at last, Elias and Vexara faced each other, the weight of tomorrow hanging between them. So Elias said softly, Dawn. Vexara nodded, her new fingers flexing unconsciously, Dawn. The Institute's gardens were silent in the deepening twilight, the last remnants of sunset painting the western sky in shades of amber and violet. Vexara and Elias walked side by side along a winding path bordered by earth flowers whose names she had learned during their many conversations. Roses, lilies, hydrangeas. The Admiral offered me a position, she said finally, breaking the contemplative silence. As military liaison to Earth, permanently stationed here. Elias' step faltered momentarily, and what did you tell him? That I needed time to consider my duty to the Empire. Duty, he repeated, the word hanging heavy between them. Always duty. They reached a small stone bench beneath a flowering magnolia tree, the same spot where weeks earlier he had told her about his sister. They sat together, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. The Science Academy has offered me a position too, Elias said after a moment. On Taurus Prime, to continue developing neural interface technology for military applications. Vexara turned to him, surprise evident in her luminescent patterns. You would leave Earth. For the right reason, his gaze met hers steadily. We each have a choice to make, it seems. It is not so simple, she sighed. A Taurian warrior does not. Please, he interrupted gently. No more about what a Taurian warrior does or doesn't do. Just talk to me as Vexara, not as Commander Nyxel. The request startled her, but she found herself nodding. Here, in this quiet garden so far from the formal hierarchies of her world, perhaps she could speak freely. When I lost my arms, she began hesitantly, I lost more than limbs. I lost my identity, my purpose. Everything I had trained to be since childhood was suddenly impossible. Her new fingers traced patterns in the air, marveling still at their perfect function. Then you gave me back those possibilities, but in the process you also showed me new ones I had never considered. Like what? He asked softly. Like the possibility of connection beyond duty, of value beyond combat prowess. She turned to face him fully, of feeling more whole with two artificial arms than I ever did with my natural ones. Elias reached out tentatively, his fingertips brushing against the synth skin of her hand. The neural interfaces transmitted the sensation perfectly, the warmth of his touch, the slight tremor in his fingers. I'm not good with words, he admitted, but I know that the thought of you leaving tomorrow feels like losing a part of myself, a part I didn't know existed until you crashed into my life. Vexara's fingers intertwined with his, metal and bone finding perfect alignment. There are ceremonies on my world, she said quietly, ways for warriors from different clans to form bonds that transcend traditional boundaries. They were created in ancient times when clan fought clan and yet sometimes hearts aligned across battle lines. Are you proposing to me, Commander? A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. I am suggesting, she replied with deliberate precision, that duty and heart need not always be separate paths. Her free hand rose to touch his face, the synth-skin fingers gentle against his cheek. The universe is vast, Elias Morgan. Surely in all that vastness there is room for us to forge our own way. His answer came not in words but in action, leaning forward, closing the distance between them until his lips met hers. The The kiss was tentative at first, then deepening as Vexara responded, her arms encircling him with careful strength. For Vexara, the sensation was overwhelming. Her neural interfaces transmitted every nuance of touch, of warmth, of connection. It was unlike anything in her training, unlike any battle or victory. In this moment, she was not commander or warrior or diplomat, simply Vexara, discovering something both alien and fundamentally right. When they finally separated, stars had emerged overhead, pinpricks of light in Earth's darkening sky. Elias rested his forehead against hers in the Taurian gesture of intimacy she had taught him. "Dawn is still coming," he whispered. "What happens then?" Vexara smiled, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in the rhythm that he now recognized as happiness. "Then we begin writing our own story between stars and worlds together." The morning light streamed through the viewport of the Taurian shuttle as it prepared for departure. Admiral Ketra stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as the last of the diplomatic delegation boarded. "Your decision is unorthodox," he said to Vexara, who stood beside him in her formal uniform, new arms gleaming. "But perhaps these unorthodox times demand such choices." "I will serve the Empire faithfully as liaison," she assured him. "And the Science Academy will benefit greatly from Dr. Morgan's continued collaboration." Ketra's secondary eyes narrowed in what Vexara recognized as amusement. "I have no doubt. His request for temporary quarters on Taurus Prime has been approved, with a shuttle allocated for his travel between worlds as needed." The Admiral turned to face her directly. "The bonding ceremony you requested has been arranged for the next solar alignment. The Imperial Guard will attend in full regalia, as is tradition for a First Blade." Emotion threatened to overwhelm Vexara's composure. "Thank you, Admiral." "Do not thank me," he replied gruffly. "This alliance with Earth must succeed if we are to survive the coming conflicts. Your personal alliance simply provides additional motivation for both sides to ensure that success." His expression softened slightly. "Besides, I stood as witness at your parents' bonding ceremony. It seems fitting to do the same for their daughter." A commotion at the shuttle's entrance drew their attention. Dr. Elias Morgan had arrived, struggling with several large cases of equipment and looking distinctly uncomfortable in the formal attire the Taurian embassy had provided for his first official visit to their homeworld. "Your human appears distressed by our gravity," Ketra observed dryly. "He will adapt," Vexara said, unable to suppress the affection in her voice. "He is more resilient than he appears." "As are you, Commander," the Admiral inclined his head respectfully, "until the solar alignment." As Ketra boarded the shuttle, Vexara moved to help Elias with his equipment. Her new arms easily lifted cases that had him straining under Earth's lighter gravity. "Ready for your first trip to another world?" she asked, taking in his nervous excitement. "Terrified," he admitted with a grin. "But in a good way. The Academy wants me to present our neural interface breakthroughs to their engineering division, and then there's meeting your family clan and the gravity adaptation and learning at least basic Taurian phrases." He trailed off as she placed a synthskin finger against his lips. "One step at a time," she advised. "We have time." 6 weeks on Taurus Prime, then back to Earth for the permanent liaison office setup, he recited. "Then splitting our time between worlds." "A complex arrangement," she acknowledged. "Worth it?" His hand found hers, flesh meeting synth-flesh in perfect harmony. "Though I'm still not clear on all the details of this bonding ceremony." The cultural attaché tried to explain, but there were some translation issues around ritual combat and blood oath that have me slightly concerned. Vexara's bioluminescent patterns rippled with amusement. "It is mostly symbolic in modern times, mostly." Elias groaned, but his eyes were bright with humor and anticipation. "The things I do for love." The word hung between them, simple, profound, transformative. Vexara had no direct Taurian translation for it. The closest concept in her language was a term that combined honor, choice, and sacred duty into a single complex idea. Yet somehow the human word felt right. "For love," she agreed, the English word feeling natural on her tongue. With her synthetic hands, hands that he had designed, that had brought them together across the void of different worlds, she gently pulled him close for a kiss. Around them, the spaceport bustled with activity. Human and Taurian personnel worked side by side, their differences evident but no longer divisive. Above them, stars waited, visible even in the morning sky, the same stars that shone on both their worlds that would guide their journey forward. 3 years later, the observation platform extended from the side of the newly constructed Interspecies Medical Research Center, offering a panoramic view of both the Earth facility below and the stars above. Dr. Elias Morgan stood at the railing, making final adjustments to a holographic presentation on neural interface applications for cross-species medical care. The soft hiss of the automatic door announced Vexara's arrival. She moved with fluid grace, her arms, now the third-generation design they had developed together, gleaming softly in the starlight. The insignia on her uniform combined Taurian military honors with the diplomatic corps emblem, a visible symbol of her dual role. The Arcturian delegation has arrived, she informed him. Their wounded will be transferred to the medical bay within the hour. Elias nodded, saving his presentation. The new interfaces are ready. If they work as well for Arcturian physiology as they have for humans and Taurians, we might finally have a universal medical translation system. Another boundary crossed, Vexara observed, coming to stand beside him at the railing. Her synthetic hand found his, the gesture now as natural as breathing. The Admiral sends his congratulations on the center's opening. The Imperial Science Academy is calling it the most significant advancement in interspecies cooperation since first contact. They said the same thing about our bonding ceremony, Elias reminded her with a smile. That was different, that was personal. Was it? He turned to face her fully. Everything we've built here started because a wounded warrior needed arms and a human doctor needed purpose. Vexara's free hand rose to trace the line of the bonding mark on his collarbone, the stylized symbol that matched the one on her own shoulder, marking them as pair-bonded across species, across worlds. The Arcturian ambassador asked about our story, she said softly, how a human and a Taurian came to lead this initiative together. What did you tell him? Her bioluminescent patterns shifted in the rhythm that was uniquely hers, the pattern of contentment and belonging that he had come to cherish. I told him that sometimes, healing one person creates ripples that can heal entire worlds. Elias smiled, leaning forward to press his forehead to hers in the Taurian gesture that had become their private ritual. Poetic, you've been practicing your diplomatic phrases. I've had a good teacher, she replied, before shifting to the human custom of a kiss, another boundary crossed, another bridge between worlds. Below them, the medical center hummed with activity as staff prepared for the arriving Arcturian wounded. Above them, stars sparkled, distant worlds, future frontiers. And between them, in the space where synthetic arms embraced human form, in the place where duty met desire and difference yielded to connection, they had found something neither had expected but both had needed. Not simply wholeness restored, but wholeness transcended. Together, they turned toward the doors, ready to welcome the next challenge, the next opportunity to transform broken pieces into new possibilities. Hand in synthetic hand, they stepped forward into the future they were building, a future of stardust and steel, of healing and hope, of boundaries crossed and bridges built. A future distinctly, beautifully their own.